"I don't think you're supposed to be here," the flight attendant said, voice tight with authority, as Monica Taylor, CEO of Luminatech, adjusted the strap of her leather briefcase and smiled calmly, her polished heels clicking softly against the aisle of the first-class cabin, the sunlight streaming through the oval windows casting a warm glow on the sleek, white panels of the aircraft. She had just boarded a transcontinental flight from New York to Los Angeles, a route she had taken countless times, but today was different, a faint tension hanging in the air as she approached the flight attendant with her boarding pass and the knowledge that she was entitled to every amenity listed in her ticket, her mind quiet yet alert, scanning the cabin silently as other passengers settled into their seats, some glancing at her with curiosity, others too absorbed in their devices to notice the exchange unfolding mere feet away. Captain Richard Hayes, a tall, silver-haired man in his early 50s, stood near the cockpit entrance, arms crossed over his crisp uniform, his expression composed yet tinged with the subtle arrogance of decades of experience, his eyes following Monica's movements as the crew hesitated, unsure how to handle the CEO, whose reputation preceded her in the corporate world, the murmurs of nearby passengers mingling with the soft hum of the jet engines, creating a tense symphony of anticipation. Monica's gaze met the flight attendant's, calm and steady, as she extended the small laminated card in her hand, a polite reminder of the first-class privileges she had purchased, her voice smooth and deliberate. "I'd like the first-class meal option, please," she said, the simple request hanging in the cabin like a pebble dropped into still water, eliciting a ripple of tension from the staff, who had evidently underestimated her presence and authority. The chrome accents of the service cart reflecting the overhead lights as the attendant glanced nervously at Captain Hayes, who raised a silver brow and gestured subtly, signaling uncertainty, a pause that stretched the moment, the hum of the engines and the distant clinking of cutlery underscoring the unspoken power. Struggle. Monica's posture relaxed but unyielding, the leather of her tailored jacket creaking softly as she shifted her weight, the calm in her voice contrasting the abrupt rigidity of the crew, who exchanged uneasy glances while the other passengers, unaware of the unfolding drama, continued their conversations and scrolling. The contrast between her composed authority and the crew's hesitant discomfort sharpening with every tick of the cabin clock, the overhead lights casting gentle shadows. Across the aisles, Monica's eyes sweeping the environment with precision, noting every minor detail from the angle of the tray tables to the spacing of the seats, the subtle scent of lavender from the cabin's air system mingling with the faint aroma of coffee and pastries, creating a moment suspended between ordinary travel and the quiet assertion of a powerful presence. She held the card firmly, a symbol not just of entitlement but of principle, as the attendant, throat clearing, repeated in a slightly higher tone, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but first-class service isn't available at this time." Monica Taylor's lips pressed together briefly, her expression serene yet resolute, a gentle exhale accompanying the small shift in her stance, signaling the silent command that respect and recognition were not granted lightly, but required acknowledgement of her role and worth. The cabin held its breath, the hum of the aircraft filling the silence as she waited, each second stretching into a small eternity, her hands resting lightly on the edge of her briefcase, the subtle pressure of her fingertips a reminder of calm authority, a quiet yet palpable challenge that had already begun to reshape the dynamics of the space around her. And in that stillness, the unseen ripple of impending consequences hovered just out of reach, waiting to unfold in the moments to come. Monica Taylor sat back in her seat, the leather of the first-class chair molding comfortably around her posture as she observed the cabin with measured calm, her mind tracing the itinerary of the day ahead while the hum of the engines created a steady, almost meditative rhythm beneath the muted chatter of passengers settling in. The golden morning light filtering through the large oval windows, casting long, soft shadows across the polished surfaces and brushed metal accents, highlighting the subtle textures of the cabin with a clarity that made even the smallest details, folded napkins, glinting cutlery, the seam of a seatbelt, stand out in sharp focus, each one a part of the larger environment she had entered with quiet confidence, her heels clicking once more as she shifted slightly to check her boarding pass against The digital display on the overhead panel, noting the time remaining before takeoff, the approximate speed of the incoming headwind, and the minor adjustments the flight attendants would need to make to keep service running smoothly under her observation. A routine that seemed almost ceremonial, yet carried with it the weight of authority inherent to her position. Monica had spent years cultivating a sense of presence that required no raising of voice or gesturing beyond subtle, deliberate movements, a practice that allowed her to command attention and respect without overt confrontation. Her gaze briefly sweeping past the other passengers to the uniformed crew, catching the small, hesitant gestures and exchanged glances, a silent communication that spoke volumes about their uncertainty in the presence of someone whose reputation as a decisive, results-driven executive preceded her by several flights. Monica's hand rested lightly on the armrest, the coolness of the metal subtly reinforcing the grounded steadiness she maintained. Her thoughts momentarily drifting to the meetings scheduled for Los Angeles, the high-level strategic discussions that would require both diplomacy and firmness, and the sense of responsibility that weighed heavily yet silently on her shoulders as a CEO, accountable not only to her shareholders, but to the entire workforce she represented. Her posture remained upright, elegant yet practical, a combination of poise and alertness that conveyed capability without arrogance. The cabin environment itself seemed to bend subtly to her composed energy, the ambient hum, the soft rustling of magazines and newspapers, and the low murmur of conversation creating a backdrop that made her presence a focal point by contrast. Monica's eyes scanned the menu tucked into the seat pocket, noting both the culinary selections and the accompanying service schedule, mentally logging the sequence in which meals would be delivered and the coordination necessary to maintain smooth operations. Her lips curved in a slight, serene smile as she prepared mentally for the interactions to come, confident in her ability to navigate them with the same calm authority she applied in the boardroom, a quiet power that required no words, only a steadfast presence and an unshakable sense of self. All while the passengers around her remained largely unaware of the subtle dynamics unfolding in the cabin, Monica's focus never wavering, each observation and thought a thread in the tapestry of her executive composure, a precise, deliberate awareness that would carry her through the flight and the challenges ahead, ensuring that every detail, from the alignment of trays to the sequence of beverage service, adhered to the standard she had come to embody, a standard set not through force or aggression, but through quiet command, meticulous attention, and the unspoken assertion of her rightful place in the environment. Captain Richard Hayes moved along the aisle with deliberate precision, his polished shoes clicking softly against the cabin floor, the lines of his uniform crisp and reflecting the overhead lights. Each gesture measured as he observed his crew responding to Monica Taylor's composed yet firm presence, the atmosphere charged with subtle tension, the soft hum of the jet engines underscoring the silent standoff. The other passengers largely unaware of the quiet authority Monica radiated, glancing occasionally from their seats as if sensing the imperceptible shift in energy, the light from the windows casting elongated, muted reflections on the tray tables and seat backs, giving the cabin an almost cinematic depth. Captain Hayes' eyes narrowed slightly, noting Monica's calm demeanor and the subtle firmness in her posture, the way she held her briefcase lightly but with intention, a silent declaration of her presence and rights. His hands resting lightly on the rail beside the galley, he exchanged brief, weighted glances with the first officer, a subtle conversation without words, the kind built on decades of experience. While Monica's attention remained focused, not on confrontation but on the meticulous observation of the environment, each minor movement of the crew, each shift in passenger attention, cataloged and processed with quiet authority. The subtle scent of the cabin's air filtering through the vents, a clean mix of coffee, pastries, and faint ozone from the engines, grounding her in the moment, allowing her to remain poised and unflustered. Captain Hayes spoke in a measured tone to the lead flight attendant, outlining procedural steps and service standards. Yet the usual confidence he exuded was tempered by the awareness that Monica Taylor's reputation as a decisive and observant executive preceded her, each word and gesture scrutinized, every micro-expression recorded, creating an invisible dialogue between power and presence. Monica's eyes flicked to the menu tucked neatly into the seat pocket, noting the sequence in which meals would be presented and the logistical choreography required for first-class service, all while maintaining her composed expression, her fingers lightly brushing the edge of the leather armrest, a grounding touch, the subtle warmth contrasting with the cool metallic scents around her. The overhead lights casting a soft glow on her face, highlighting the calm determination that underpinned every measured movement. Captain Hayes' voice carried through the aisle again, procedural yet subtly authoritative, directing his crew while also unconsciously gauging the reaction of the passengers seated with a presence that demanded respect. Monica's attention shifted briefly to the large windows, the cloudscape rolling past in a steady rhythm. Each formation mirrored in her mind as she considered the calculated steps ahead. The flight attendants moved with a quiet precision. Aware of the silent scrutiny from both Captain Hayes and Monica, the unspoken dynamic balancing authority, professionalism, and the subtle power Monica wielded without overt action, each passenger now, even if unconsciously, feeling the tension and the weight of the moment, a cabin seemingly ordinary yet charged with an unspoken lesson in presence, composure, and the quiet assertion of rightful authority that required no raised voice. Only the serene confidence of someone accustomed to navigating complex dynamics with clarity, insight, and unwavering poise. Monica shifted slightly, checking the alignment of her briefcase on the tray table, her gaze sweeping the cabin, noting angles, distances, and the smallest gestures of the crew, each action cataloged and held in reserve, a silent ledger of observation, while Captain Hayes returned to his post near the cockpit, maintaining vigilance over both the operational and interpersonal dimensions of the flight, a subtle battle of awareness and authority unfolding within the polished confines of the first-class cabin, every detail amplified in the clarity of the moment, the soft clinking of utensils, the muted murmur of nearby passengers, the gentle hum of the engines all blending into a background score to the quiet assertion of Monica Taylor's presence, a study in calm command and meticulous observation, where every gesture, glance, and movement carried weight, significance, and the unspoken promise that decorum, respect, and rightful acknowledgement were not mere formalities but essential elements of her journey and her expectation of recognition. Monica Taylor took a deep breath, the leather of her briefcase pressing lightly against her lap as she straightened in the first-class seat, her eyes meeting those of the lead flight attendant with a calm intensity that conveyed both patience and unyielding expectation, the soft overhead lights glinting off the polished metal of the service trays and accentuating the meticulous order of the cabin, while passengers nearby continued their quiet conversations, unaware of the subtle but unmistakable exchange unfolding, the engine's steady hum beneath her feet providing a rhythmic underscore to the tension that seemed suspended in the space between polite service and rightful authority. She extended her hand slightly, a gesture both simple and commanding, as if to anchor the moment and reinforce the principle that respect and professional acknowledgement were not optional but inherent. The attendant hesitated, fingers brushing the laminated menu before retreating slightly, eyes flicking to Captain Hayes, who stood near the cockpit doorway with a composed but perceptive gaze, his posture upright, arms crossed, a silent assessment in the tilt of his head and the brief tightening of his jaw. Monica's attention remained unwavering, noting each micro-expression, each subtle movement. The shift of weight in the crew, the slight stiffening of a shoulder, the soft clink of a tray being adjusted, cataloging the sequence of interactions in real time as she prepared to navigate them with her characteristic balance of poise and quiet authority. The sunlight streaming through the large oval windows cast warm streaks across her tailored jacket, highlighting the calm resolve in her posture and the steady rhythm of her breathing. She tapped the corner of the briefcase lightly, a small, deliberate movement, signaling readiness, clarity, and the unspoken understanding that every action, from the smallest gesture to the measured words that would follow, carried weight, influence, and expectation. The cabin itself seemed to respond, the low murmur of conversation dampened by the subtle gravity of her presence, passengers turning slightly in their seats, sensing the quiet command without fully recognizing it, while Captain Hayes and his crew exchanged fleeting glances, a silent, Communication of uncertainty and acknowledgement. Monica shifted her gaze to the menu once more, mentally rehearsing the phrasing of her request, the tone, the cadence, the controlled assertiveness necessary to maintain both civility and authority, her fingertips lightly tracing the edge of the briefcase, the sensation grounding her focus as the soft, filtered scent of coffee and freshly baked bread from the galley mixed with the faint mechanical warmth of the engines, reinforcing the calm yet deliberate tempo of her movements. She inhaled slowly, eyes sweeping the cabin one final time, noting each detail with clarity and precision, the angle of seatbacks, the alignment of tray tables, the subtle spacing of utensils, the gentle tilt of an overhead light, all observed as part of the comprehensive awareness she had honed over years of executive experience. The moment stretched, each second resonating with the potential for resolution, for acknowledgement, and for the quiet assertion of rightful expectation. Monica's posture remained steady, a blend of composed elegance and unshakable confidence, radiating a presence that required no interruption, no raised voice, only the observant patience and measured decisiveness that had become her trademark. The cabin, with its polished surfaces, ambient light, and soft hum of the engines, became both stage and witness to the quiet command of Monica Taylor, a demonstration that authority could be asserted gracefully, power could be recognized silently, and respect could be garnered without confrontation. Each micro-movement and attentive gaze contributing to an atmosphere charged with poised anticipation, the delicate balance between civility and rightful assertion captured in every detail of her composure and every subtle observation of the environment around her, a study in the art of presence, awareness, and measured action. The flight attendant's hesitation became more pronounced, a slight shift in weight, a tightening of the jaw, a brief exchange of glances with a colleague that spoke volumes without words, while Monica Taylor's eyes remained steady, absorbing every micro-movement, every subtle tremor of uncertainty, the calm assertion in her posture, and the quiet authority in her gaze radiating across the cabin. A silent signal that she expected recognition without the need for raised voices or overt commands. The cabin lights reflecting softly on the polished aluminum of the service carts and the glimmering accents of cutlery, as if highlighting the tension suspended in the air, the low hum of the engines providing a steady backdrop, almost meditative, to the charged stillness between the crew and their distinguished passenger. Monica adjusted her posture slightly, letting her fingertips graze the edge of the briefcase resting on her lap, a small, deliberate gesture that conveyed both patience and control. Her gaze sweeping once more across the aisle, noting the subtle signs of apprehension in the attendants' expressions, the careful spacing of their hands on trays, the slight hesitation before each movement, all catalogued silently in her mind. A meticulous record of the unspoken dynamics in play. Captain Richard Hayes cleared his throat, the sound deliberate and commanding, his voice echoing slightly in the narrow space as he issued instructions with precision and authority, yet his eyes betrayed a flicker of acknowledgement toward Monica, a recognition of her composed assertiveness. The other passengers, mostly absorbed in their own routines, cast occasional glances toward the scene, sensing an unusual energy, the kind that commands attention not by volume or gesture, but through presence alone. Monica allowed herself a slight, controlled exhale, the subtle sound mingling with the muted shuffle of service trays and the gentle clinking of silverware as the attendants moved with increased attentiveness. Every micro-movement, from the tilt of a head to the brief catch of a breath, recorded and interpreted, her mind mapping the flow of interactions, calculating the most effective approach to resolve the tension without disrupting the decorum of the cabin. Her eyes momentarily drifted to the large windows, the cloud formations rolling past with a quiet majesty, each one a fleeting reflection of the controlled, yet powerful presence she maintained within the enclosed space. Monica's lips curved into a faint, composed smile, an expression that conveyed calm assurance and silent expectation, the subtle warmth of the sunlight on her jacket complementing the coolness of the polished metal around her. The cabin seemed to respond in kind, the subtle murmur of conversation softening, the movement of the crew becoming more precise, measured, almost deferential. As if acknowledging the unspoken authority she held, Monica shifted slightly in her seat, adjusting the angle of her briefcase to rest comfortably against her leg, the soft leather creaking just enough to punctuate the silence with a tangible presence. She leaned back slightly, eyes scanning the aisle one final time, absorbing every glance, every posture, every moment of hesitation, and with that quiet observation, she prepared for the next move, the subtle balancing of patience, authority, and precise timing that would ultimately allow her to navigate the situation with composure, elegance, and unassailable confidence. The low hum of the engines, the soft light filtering through the windows, and the polished surfaces of the cabin combining to frame a scene of poised anticipation, a silent negotiation, unfolding in micro-expressions, gestures, and the unspoken understanding that control, respect, and recognition were not given lightly, but required acknowledgement of her presence, composure, and quiet command within the space. Monica Taylor closed her eyes for a brief moment, letting the warmth of the cabin's sunlight wash over her face, the subtle rays filtering through the oval windows and casting soft highlights on her tailored jacket. The hum of the engines beneath her creating a low, steady vibration that seemed to resonate with the rhythm of her breath, her hands resting lightly on the armrests, fingers tracing the smooth leather in a quiet gesture of grounding, while the flight attendants moved about the cabin. With cautious attentiveness, each step measured and precise, their eyes occasionally flicking toward her, an unspoken acknowledgement of the calm authority she projected. Captain Richard Hayes remained near the cockpit doorway, his posture upright, the slight narrowing of his eyes betraying the recognition of a presence that commanded respect without need for overt assertion. Monica allowed the moment to stretch, her mind cataloging the details of the cabin with meticulous observation, the angle of the tray tables, the subtle alignment of utensils, the gentle reflections of light on polished surfaces, the slight shifts in posture and breath of those around her, each detail adding to a composite understanding of the space and the dynamics within it, a silent map of authority and influence. She inhaled slowly, the scent of coffee and fresh pastries mingling with the faint, cool trace of the aircraft air system, grounding her awareness while reinforcing the serenity of her posture. Monica's eyes drifted to the horizon visible through the windows, the cloud formations moving in slow, deliberate motion, a visual reminder of patience and timing. The cabin seemed to hold its breath, the murmurs of passengers softened to a low hum, the subtle clinks and shuffles of service trays acting as punctuation in the otherwise suspended atmosphere, each movement around her contributing to a tapestry of anticipation and poised observation. Her lips curved in a faint, controlled smile, not one of triumph but of composure, a signal that the situation was being observed, assessed, and silently guided without disruption. The light reflecting off the metallic accents of the cabin creating patterns that danced subtly across her features, emphasizing the quiet confidence that had become her signature presence. Captain Hayes exchanged a brief, almost imperceptible glance with the first officer, a silent coordination in response to the unspoken influence of Monica's poised authority, while she remained still, eyes open now, taking in the balance of movements, expressions, and energy in the cabin, cataloging, measuring, and preparing for the sequence of interactions yet to unfold, each breath deliberate, each shift of weight intentional, a study in controlled patience and poised anticipation, the soft ambient sounds of the aircraft, the steady vibration of the engines, the occasional rustle of a magazine, the faint whisper of conversation, blended into a background that highlighted the quiet but undeniable power of presence. Monica Taylor embodied the principle that authority, respect, and recognition were best asserted not through confrontation or volume, but through composed observation, deliberate gestures, and unwavering attention to detail. The cabin itself seeming to mirror the serenity and focus she maintained, a suspended moment of clarity, balance, and silent command that would guide the forthcoming resolution with precision, integrity, and the subtle yet unmistakable force of quiet confidence. Captain Richard Hayes' expression shifted subtly as he received a communication from the Airline Operations Center, the slight tightening around his eyes, and the brief incline of his chin signaling a new awareness. Monica Taylor remained seated, her posture impeccable, hands resting lightly on the leather armrests. Her gaze steady and attentive as she observed the micro-expressions of the crew, the polished cabin reflecting the soft morning light in elongated patterns across the aisle. The quiet hum of the engines a constant undercurrent beneath the low murmur of passengers settling in for the flight, a gentle breeze of recycled air brushing softly against her face. Monica's eyes flicked toward the lead flight attendant who had paused mid-step, the tray of uneaten meals suspended in her hands as she glanced at the captain with a mixture of hesitation and dawning realization. Monica allowed herself a faint, controlled smile, a subtle acknowledgement of the silent shift occurring without any need for words. The cabin seemed to hold its breath, every subtle movement amplified by the tension and anticipation in the air. Captain Hayes adjusted his posture, clearing his throat before addressing the crew with a calm but firm directive, the tone carrying the weight of authority tempered by the recognition of the appropriate correction. Monica noted each gesture, each slight movement, the alignment of arms, the tilt of heads, the measured steps across the aisle, cataloging the unfolding acknowledgement in her mind, the ambient sounds, the soft click of shoes, the muted shuffle of service trays, the subdued conversations of passengers, blended into a backdrop for the quiet yet decisive realignment of the cabin dynamics. Her gaze swept the aisle once more, registering the subtle nods and slight shifts of the crew as they processed the unexpected instruction. Monica's breathing remained measured, steady, each inhale and exhale reinforcing her composure and calm presence, the sunlight streaming through the windows highlighting the contours of her face, the glint in her eyes reflecting the clarity and precision of her awareness. Captain Hayes returned to his stance near the cockpit, hands lightly resting on the rail, his demeanor composed yet now marked with a hint of humility, a silent acknowledgement of the effectiveness of Monica's poised authority. The cabin settled into a new rhythm, the low hum of the engines now interwoven with the subtle sounds of the crew moving efficiently, purposefully, their prior hesitation replaced by a careful attentiveness. Monica's posture did not change, yet her presence seemed to ripple outward, a quiet force shaping the environment without a single raised voice. Every passenger now subtly attuned to the sense of decorum and order, the polished surfaces, glimmering accents, and soft ambient light serving as a stage for the delicate balance of recognition and authority. Monica's hands shifted slightly, fingertips brushing the edge of the briefcase, a gentle gesture of readiness, assurance, and calm oversight. The cabin reflecting the quiet transformation that had occurred, the crew's movements now precise, deliberate, and aligned with the standards she silently imposed. The air filled with a sense of restored balance and decorum, the subtle interplay of observation, patience, and poised authority culminating in a moment of understated resolution. Monica Taylor remained seated, a study in quiet command and unshakable composure. The cabin transformed into a testament to presence, respect, and the power of silent, measured influence where recognition and justice unfolded naturally, without confrontation, without escalation. Only the steady assertion of rightful authority and the unspoken acknowledgement of competence and poise. Monica Taylor exhaled slowly, the faint warmth of sunlight across her shoulders mingling with the soft hum of the engines as she allowed herself a subtle sense of quiet satisfaction, the polished cabin now resonating with the orderly precision she had silently orchestrated. Captain Richard Hayes stood near the cockpit entrance, his posture straight but softened by the acknowledgement of the proper course of action. The crew moving with renewed attentiveness, a delicate balance of professionalism and deference that had not been present before. Monica's eyes swept across the aisle once more, noting the alignment of service trays, the smooth, gliding motion of the attendants, the calm, yet purposeful steps they took to carry out their duties without hesitation, every gesture, every glance, every subtle movement a confirmation of the shift in dynamics. She allowed a small, composed smile to cross her lips, the kind that spoke of resolution without ostentation, the gentle tilt of her head and the soft, controlled cadence of her breath marking the satisfaction of observed integrity and quietly enforced order. Passengers around her remained mostly unaware of the full implications, yet a sense of calm had permeated the cabin. The soft click of a seatbelt latch, or the muted shuffle of a program now carrying a note of composure. Monica's hands rested lightly on the armrests, fingers brushing the leather as if to mark the moment. Each micro-contact a subtle grounding of awareness. Captain Hayes returned to his position, observing the flow of cabin activity with a tempered yet perceptive gaze, acknowledging the effectiveness of quiet authority and composed assertiveness without the need for further verbal exchange. The overhead lights reflected in gentle arcs on the metallic accents of the service carts, the warm morning light creating elongated reflections along the polished aisle, emphasizing the clarity and order that now defined the environment. Monica's focus remained, cataloging the scene, the positioning of utensils, the subtle spacing of meal plates, the attentive movements of the crew, all reinforcing the narrative of competence, observation, and the unspoken assertion of rightful presence. She allowed herself a measured breath, the soft vibration of the engines beneath her feet a reminder of steady progress and momentum, her gaze drifting briefly to the distant horizon through the windows, the layered cloudscape moving slowly, a visual rhythm in harmony with the cadence of calm authority she maintained, each passenger subtly attuned to the presence she radiated. The cabin transformed into a space of composed acknowledgement, respect, and order without conflict or escalation. Monica's posture remained poised, elegant yet practical, a testament to the strength of presence and measured influence. The subtle interplay of light, shadow, and reflection creating a cinematic framing of the resolution, the crew now fully aligned in their attentiveness, each movement and glance reflecting the quiet lessons imparted by a confident, observant, and unflinching executive. Monica allowed herself a faint, serene inhale, the cabin settling into a rhythm of harmony, the soft metallic gleam of the overhead panels and the glint of polished surfaces emphasizing the subtle triumph of quiet, assured authority, her presence alone shaping the environment, enforcing decorum and demonstrating the value of patience, clarity, and integrity, a silent assertion of influence and recognition that required no further words, no overt gestures, only the composed, unwavering confidence of someone fully in command of both herself and the moment. Monica Taylor rose from her seat as the flight neared cruising altitude, the sunlight streaming through the large oval windows casting a gentle glow across her tailored jacket and polished briefcase. The cabin now imbued with a sense of calm and order that she had quietly established, the polished metal of the service carts reflecting soft highlights on the aisle and the subtle shadows of the attentive crew moving with deliberate precision. Captain Richard Hayes observed from near the cockpit entrance, his expression composed yet softened by the recognition of the proper handling of the situation. Monica's gaze swept the cabin one last time, noting the alignment of utensils, the smooth flow of service trays, the subtle posture adjustments of each attendant, a meticulous observation that spoke to her continued awareness and attention to detail. The low hum of the engines provided a steady, meditative background as passengers continued to read, converse softly, or glance out at the cloud formations drifting past. The air filtered through the vents carrying a faint aroma of coffee and pastries that mingled with the gentle warmth of sunlight, creating a serene, almost cinematic ambience. Monica's hands rested lightly on the armrests, fingers tracing the smooth leather as a grounding gesture, her posture poised, elegant, and unshakable, a visual testament to composure and quiet authority. Captain Hayes returned briefly to the aisle, his movements precise and considered, acknowledging with subtle nods the effectiveness of Monica's presence and the seamless adherence of the crew to the appropriate course of action. The subtle glint of light on the overhead panels and polished surfaces accentuated the contours of the cabin, highlighting the delicate balance between order, recognition, and respect that had been quietly achieved. Monica's eyes drifted to the horizon visible through the windows, observing the layered cloudscape and the steady progression of the aircraft, the sense of forward movement mirrored in the calm, steady rhythm of her breath, a moment suspended in both time and space where presence, patience, and composed influence converged. The passengers, largely unaware of the full scope of the dynamics, nevertheless felt the shift in energy, the subtle ripple of decorum and attentiveness that now defined the environment. Monica allowed herself a slow, controlled exhale, a faint, serene smile touching her lips. As she acknowledged the quiet resolution she had facilitated without overt words or gestures, the soft click of the seatbelt, the muted rustle of programs, the subdued whisper of conversation, and the gentle vibration of the engines, all forming a background score to the culmination of poised authority, her gaze continued to sweep the cabin, observing, recording, and silently affirming the integrity and professionalism that had taken root, the polished surfaces, the reflective highlights, and the ambient light created a cinematic framing that underscored the subtle triumph of calm composure, deliberate observation, and quiet command. Monica Taylor's presence alone shaping the atmosphere, guiding behavior, and establishing recognition without confrontation, a testament to the power of patience, clarity, and measured influence. As she moved toward the aisle, each step deliberate and graceful. The cabin itself seemed to resonate with the finality of the moment, the harmony of efficiency, respect, and acknowledgement now fully realized. And as she made her way toward the forward section, the gentle warmth of sunlight, the reflective gleam of the polished accents, and the soft hum of the engines together framed a scene of quiet victory, integrity, and unspoken authority, the subtle interplay of light, movement, and observation capturing the essence of a resolution achieved through composure, confidence, and the inherent power of presence.